Tonight's speaker is Muhammed Salim. Muhammed Salim is a senior product designer at Revolut. He currently leads designs in cards and recurring payments in the retail app of Revolut. During his time at Revolut, he successfully designed the subscription payments model, payments to be contact first, the username payments, the global payment search, virtual cards for online shopping, and reshaped the user experience in payments to fit regulations in Japan, Singapore, and the USA. Muhammed, it's so wonderful to have you here on UX Joburg. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for attending. Today for my presentation is just our learnings since I joined Revolut. My name is Muhammed. I'm senior product designer in Revolut. So for those who doesn't know Revolut, Revolut is a financial app that recently we have changed the complete revamp of the app to be your financial life app. So prior to that, for those who know Revolut before, it used to be a travel app. So people who travels across different countries, we can do like currency exchange and stuff. So recently we revamped the whole thing to make it like your financial life app. So that will take you from savings to gives you, budgeting, analytics, and etc. So Revolut currently have like more than 30 currencies in the app. It's supported more than 35 countries. And we are growing in terms of having customers. And so we've got currently up to 13 million customers. Revolut has been founded in 2015. We recently have raised 917 million and the company valuation came up to 5.5 billion. We launched in the UK, Singapore, USA, Australia, and recently in Japan. About myself, just for you to know me a little bit, I've been working in design for almost 7 years. I truly myself love designing. And I've been quite fortunate to actually experience it into different tech industries. So I worked in the e-commerce, ground transportation, telecommunication, and now I'm currently doing financial technology. Revolut, I've joined roughly in 2018, roughly 2 years ago from now. Prior, when I joined payments team at the time, and it was great, but then, as the time progressed, you want to try different things. So I've moved into the cards team where I'm currently at. So the presentation today, I would love to go through two parts of it, which I find quite useful, and I hope you do at the end of the presentation. So the first part will consist of the values, like what makes Revolut stand out, what makes Revolut the company, which I personally believe the place to be. In terms of if you want to progress, if you want to learn really rapidly. And so the values, and at the same time, I want to talk about the design approach. Each team has its own approach because we've got like full autonomy in the whole company. So it starts with on the team structure. So we've got in total currently 30 designers mixed between juniors to lead, and they're spread into different sectors. So you've got the B2C and B2B. So we've got business app as well. And we recently hit up to 500 businesses signed up to it and using it. The demand is more right now on the B2C. Also, we've got 22 designers and we open to hire more. So in terms of the structure, which is nothing I would say is new, I'm sure majority of you would have read or seen or even experienced these things. So we currently decentralized design teams spread across product teams. So the structure you have a new product team, like you've got, for example, the retail app, and we've got different sections. So you've got, the cards team, payments team, the accounts team, the savings team, etc. So each team will have product owner, product designer, iOS and Android developer and backend. We do have a think crime team. We have legal compliance, etc. So we have to go and check, each time we design something or develop something and prototype or test, we go through all of these sections to make sure what we design is safe, secure, and complying to the regulation for the country that we're launching at. In terms of the values, which, I truly believe they are part of the actual what makes, because, I'm sure there's plenty of talented people and great designers out there, and developers as well, or product owners, or whatever your profession are. But having the great team that is aligned with the company vision or with the company values, I do believe is quite important. So one of the values we have is dream team. So the way we think as individual teams or product teams is like a professional team, football teams. So each one has his own role to play, and this role will feed into the primary goal. And we do what's the right word to describe this? Is like if you play music, for example, each note on the music note has its own part to play, but when you hear it, it's fantastic music. In terms of the never settle. So I can give life examples through my experience. Everyone who I have worked with in the company, I should say almost, I don't believe in absolute, but almost everyone I worked with, they're highly talented, highly driven people. Sometimes you find them working over the weekend, or sometimes working over their spare time, not just working because simply they love what they do. An example, one of the Android developers I worked with discovered a bug, for example, on the stuff he did, and over the weekend he worked on it, and then on Monday he came up and he just said, I don't feel well, guys, I'll just to call it off. And we asked him what was the reason. He said, I just discovered the bug and I couldn't let it be, and I wanted to fix it quickly. So it's that sort of drive that we have between our teams, and it's something I truly appreciate. It's something that you find yourself, even if you lack a little bit, someone else will push you further. So it's quite crucial to have, as I do believe. The second one is thinking, or third one is the thinking deeper. It might sound really quite obvious to you, we use logic or reason, common sense, but if we ask ourselves, how much time do we spend each day thinking? We often, our brain is quite busy with, responsibilities in life and things like this. And by the time to have, at least, let's just say, an hour of time to think properly, we find ourselves, myself as well, I don't do it as much. So a good example of this, for example, Newton. He managed to get the amazing formula that we, being used famously nowadays, only when he stopped working. There was a plague at the time in Cambridge. So he, during that time of lockdown, ironically, he managed to actually get this because he was thinking. So thinking is one of the core things we have in Revolut. So the fourth one would be getting it done. So it's like I'm sure you've heard of the say where if 90% is the hard work, the last 10% is fight. So it's always that little bit of the 3 meters away, or the last push that you need to actually do to get the stuff done. Often it's what distinguishes you or the others in the competition. I have to say proudly, even in the company, I'm proud of every single team I worked with. During the COVID time, we had struggled a little bit, and there was, working from home, and the business was a bit, struggling. But then we got into really, a really, really strong place that we never used to be at. So simply because everyone is pushing hard, everyone is trying to put their best on the table, and it's not easy. And I have to say that, it's not easy to do, but at the same time, your values or your goals has to be aligned to it. Your personal goals aligned to the company goals or to the business goals. The last one is to deliver well, or we believe, in everything we do or everything we build has to touch our customers from personal level and emotional level. So it's not something that we think we should develop or we should design. Let's just do it. It has to have rationale behind it. It has to have a real problem behind the whole scene. Because if you design something out of blue, just like this, assuming that people use it, is not the right approach. It's not good to go and do something based on guesses. So that's for the values. In terms of the design approach we use, each team, as I said earlier in this presentation, has its own way of doing it. As I said, you have full autonomy in terms of how we choose, we deliver, or we design or solve the problem we approached or we've got. So it's never easy, as I'm sure majority of you would be aware that, you know, it's not a rigid steps of 1, 2, 3 or ABC, get it done. It's quite not linear. So there's an idea around the Jungian psychology where it's called circumambulation. So Jon has mentioned and said the goal of psychic development is the self. There's no linear evolution, there's only circumambulation of the self. So what does circumambulation mean? So it's if we break it down, the Latin is circum is around, ambulate is to walk, so is the act in sacred object to achieve. So if I try to visualize this to break it down and make it simpler to you, it's, you know, looking at the graph that Jung has actually drawn at the time. So let's just say if A is your starting point and B is the potential or the future self or the goal you want to achieve. What happened here is visually it looks to you like it's a straightforward, it's a linear approach to get to it. However, there will be points through the way or through the journey which will interest you and get you closer to the potential future, potential solution that you want to get. And they believe is not a linear, it's a circular that you move around to actually get you closer and closer to the goal you want to be. Sometimes you might not even achieve the goal, but get closer to it, but sometimes you might exceed it. So that's another visualization of it. Someone called Anastasia on the web when I was trying to research to get more sources for it. So she visualized it in a way where you can go from A to B, and then you can see the green dots are your interests, which is the steps you need to do to achieve your goal. So some believes it's not a pure circular movement, it's a spiral, but it leads you to it. So you might ask and say, as a curious designer, like, you know, what is this relation to design? What is circumambulation related to it? So I'm sure, again, like you have seen this before, which is lots of people have said the design thinking or the design process is not a linear flow. So the way we see it, or the way I broke it down from this, or taken this into John's theory or practice into it. So you've got structure. So you structure your thoughts between empathize or define, ideate, prototype, and test. So each one of these steps are structure. So it's your logic structure. So that's your logic thinking, and anything in between it to get to it. These are the steps. These are the creative thinking to get to it. So how does that look? So let's just say if A is the starting point and B is the idea you want to get, all of these dots, the steps you need to do to understand, the steps to define the problem, to get into the idea, prototype, and keep circulating around. So if we, again, break this into steps to make it more clearer. So logic are the structure you have. The creativity is the sides where, you know, the steps you need to do. So creativity or creative mind often is not logical, is not structured. It's very chaotic. So it's very moving around. So the key here is if logic is, I'm sure you've read the book Thinking Slow and Fast. Logic is quite, you know, slow thinking. Creative mind, or which is the intuitive brain, moving fast. So if you get into a stage where, let's just say, a junior designer join, and he's got the structure, he's got the logic, he defined them, or she defined them, he gets now into the creative side, which is the learning curve. So all of these small steps becomes your second nature. So they are never, like, you know, from my own experience or what I've learned, they're never a rigid flow. So I'll be jumping from between them to actually achieve one of these goals to make sure I've got the solution. Sometimes you go into a problem which is a green field, so you start from the beginning, but sometimes you get into a mature product. So when you get that, how do you jump between to actually analyze these things? Or another problem you get is how do you get all everyone's understanding? Like, you know, you've got your product team, you've got your stakeholders, you've got different stakeholders like legals, compliance, regulators. You know, each one of those will play part of shaping the product. So my job as a designer is not just to design something delightful. It's also secure, also, you know, compliant. So each one of those, to me, or to my experience, they become my users. They become the one I design for, to make sure it's, you know, secure. I need to do this. To make sure it's compliant, I need to do that. So you gather all these information, and that's part of your creativity, to actually feed into these logics to make sure they, you know, they're structured, because, you know, we need to have these two balances. So what's the conclusion? Like, you know, I'm trying to keep it short here, is design process is a circumambulation of the goal. So you circulate around it. It might, in your vision, looks straightforward, but, you know, the movement around it is circular. Define your design structure logically and do the steps to reach each structured goal creatively. And it's, I believe that's a key feature. Like, you know, as a designer, you have to be creative, and you have to have your logic to actually achieve something, because dreams, like, everyone will dream to get into certain thing. Everyone will have a goal, an ambitious goal, to get into a certain position or certain design or element into it. But if you don't have goal set to it, they're just dreams. So that's in terms of the approach we take. As I said, each team takes it differently, but we like to strive to jump in between, because there's never, as I said before, a rigid flow to follow. So from this point of view, I would like to show you some examples. We worked on the retail app. So a recent feature which will come to you soon is subscription model. So I'm sure you have seen this, and you might say to yourself, what's new in here? I'm giving you this example to show you how we think, how we take the problem and trying to solve it in a different way. What makes Revolut different to others? So if you check, you know, respectively speaking, Monzo, N26, any other competitors, they all have the schedule tab. Everyone's got the subscription site, but what makes us different to them? So after analyzing everything and understanding the core problem from the users, you know, as a user, for example, I was signed up to a subscription to try their product for free, but I forgot, and I ended up paying, and then I had to go call them back. You know, all this hassle to actually manage these things, it's painful. So what we did here is, this is the difference. So this is what everyone has. You can have a list or view of things, but in most competitors right now, you can't block the merchant. So let's just say I'm happy with them and you don't want to go through the struggle. We'll give you the control, we'll give you the ability to go on your app and then select that merchant, block them, so they no longer can charge you. We give you ability to actually track if there is this period, if this subscription is ending soon. So we send you a reminder, your subscription is coming to end, you know, at least 2 days before it's ending. Would you like to continue or cancel it? So we give you this option. How does that look? For example, when you join, for example, Netflix, I've just signed up to Netflix using my Revolut card. So you receive a notification, it will automatically detect or understand this is a new subscription. So it will tell you, you have just signed up. We will remind you 2 days before it ends. You know, you've got, let's just say, 2 weeks period free to try. And the list you can see is part of trial subscription. It's listed, and you're not being charged yet. So trial ending at this stage. Once the trial is ending, like, you know, coming to an end 2 days prior, we send you a push notification to inform you. So you receive it, and then you have the full control. We tell you, because the way we designed it, or the solution we come into it is, you can't cancel the actual subscription, but we give you the ability to block the merchant. So therefore, if you forgot your credentials, if you can't just go into Netflix to log in for some reason, yet you have the ability to actually not being charged yet. Finally, the ability to how block the merchant. So you receive, let's just say, you signed up, but you're not happy with them for some reason, and you want to just block any future payments and then go onto their website and cancel it. So you receive push notification, you go into your transaction details screen. It's simple as, you know, pressing the block feature and instantly be blocked. So these small things, like it might sound quite obvious, but, you know, the key here is understanding small difference that will make you different to others. And is those small things, those small steps will help you to achieve, you know, the ultimate goal, to be the best in the market, or to have the best product, you know, with the whole team that you worked with. So yeah, the last thing I want to say here is, there's a quotation from Frank Gehry, who's an architect, and I found it quite interesting. So he says, if you ever know what you will do in advance, you will not do it. Your creativity starts from being curious. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for showing us a bit behind your process at Revolut and the kind of work that you guys be doing. I especially enjoyed the practical session where you showed some screens from your product. We actually have some questions that have been sent in by some of our listeners. So I'm going to go off and read some of those to you. Are you ready to do a Q&A?
Yeah, happy. Go ahead.
Fantastic.
Please.
Cool. Okay, so the first question. What is the biggest challenge with having a decentralized design team? Do you all know what the other teams are working on, or is it up to the design leadership to create alignment in the work?
Cool, that's a great question. Psychologists have said, and I like to refer to them as well into this point, each mind does exist on its own unique place. Like, you'll have your own place to think of. And to get these minds to speak to each other just like this, it's impossible. So the way to do it is by creating the need. So the way we do it here is each product will have, let's just say, will have a need to contact the other product. So for example, I'm working on one of the recent project is creating virtual cards. So creating virtual cards contact or linked with the web app, is linked with the account screen, is linked with different products. So what happened is we created the need organically for you to go and speak to them. So what happened is you go and speak to that person or to that team and say, look, I'm about to make the change and I have a new suggestion to do this to that. And then is there any implication? So you look into it from product perspective, and then collaboratively or collectively, you'll come up with a good solution. And then you take it into further checks like, regulation and risk and etc. But, having decentralized, I think it's quite important to do so, because once you have that centralized, you do for some reason lose the touch, from my experience, of understanding, or feeling you own the site, or the ownership is lost. But having it, decentralized, and you got your own team, your own product that you actually, looking after or cater for day to day, that's completely different from just doing a project here or there.
Okay, fantastic. Our next question: what is the ratio of UX researchers to UX designers to developers in your product teams? Do you believe this is the right ratio?
Sure. So we don't have UX designers and UI designers. We've got product designers in the team. So a product designer's role is to cover both. So you will do the research, you will do your analysis, your competitor analysis, and then check everything, and then come up with a hypothesis. So if let's just say I'm working on a greenfield project, and they came up to me and said, the business ask is to have X and Y. So I take that and then I check as a product designer, is this a real problem? Is there's a need for it from user perspective, or will the customer use this? It's not just because there's a noise or there's an ask to do, you have to check this and then highlight it and then come back to your stakeholders or the business and go, look, my findings are this, if you want to do it, we should consider this list, for example. So that's, as a product designer, you do both. Developers usually will have, so the team structure, let's just say in product team, you will have one product owner, you'll have often one designer. If the problem you're solving is massive, you will have junior and senior in product design in the team. You might have multiple developers. It's all to do with the problem you're solving. So if it's simple, then you'll have one professional per team. So you often will be like product owner, product designer, iOS developer, Android developer backend. Sometimes we have a data analyst. Sometimes we have operation manager, data scientist. Is like, all of these things depends on the task you're being given or the problem you're solving.
Okay, it's really interesting. I like how you make a distinction between how product designers do the work of UX and UI. So they give an interesting setup there. Our next question is, what makes Revolut different to competitors such as Monzo and even traditional banks moving into the digital space, such as Barclays?
Sure. I think the difference here is majority of us are not bankers. I'm speaking of neobanks or technology banks. This is from the traditional banks are different. So Monzo, Revolut, N26, all the new banks. These the difference that will distinguish us from them, I believe, is we do have the ability to what's the right word to describe it? As I mentioned in my presentation, like, you know, if the 90% or 95% is hard work, which I believe everyone has it, we've got in Revolut highly talented people, so driven to the level where they were not, you know, they were not accepted to deliver any junks. You know, even from code perspective, if they look at the code, it has to be clean, has to be refactored, has to be clear, and, you know, bug free if possible, to actually achieve. Designers will be very similar. You know, when before COVID hits in, I used to design my designs prototype before even development, put them into prototype, and I just go on the street. I take 3 cards with me, and then I test it with random people. And I say, you know, some of them will heard of Revolut at the time, some will never heard of Revolut, and which is fantastic for me because I can learn more. So it was that. I think is the extra step, trying to do that extra mile, that helped us to actually be distinguished.
Okay, fantastic. I think a follow-up question to that could be, one of our listeners, Kolani, has asked, how did you manage to convince users to switch from traditional banks to using Revolut?
I think the simple answer to this, by listening to them. It's you know, majority of users we have Revolut community site where people go and talk about their struggles or wishes to have, or if something they don't like or they like, they talk about it. So we do listen, and we do deliver what we promise to deliver. Sometimes, and things could take time for regulation purposes, like, you know, or reasons they not allow us, you know, for certain things to be delivered at a certain time. But majority of times, what we promised, we have delivered, and that's why, you know, customers are very happy with that.
Okay. Next question is from Taran Subramani. Sorry if I butchered that, Taran. Does Revolut have a centralized design system across all of the product teams?
Decentralized. So we don't have
a centralized.
We do. So the way design function is, so it's around 30 people we've got currently, and each week we will meet as designers to sync up. So we will do show and tell. We put our projects, and then we just give feedback, because it's always like, you know, as much as talented you could be, you'll always miss. So we do that. At the same time, each designer will be allocated in a product team, where each product does speak to another product by need. So, like, you know, if I need to change certain things, it's linked to another product. So therefore I need to go and speak to them. But yeah, it's as I mentioned before, communication is not something we, I believe, as a human, are good at. You know, sometimes there are a few people who are good at, you know, communicating or passing their message, but majority are not. So therefore, how do we create this? It's by nature, it's the need. So therefore, we've done that as well. So it actually works really well.
Okay, and do you guys use a design system that is built up of components to manage your designs?
We do. Yes, we do have. I think it's a known problem as well, because every company I worked with in the past, including Revolut, so we build a design system, but then the design system, as it grows big, it's evolving, it's changing. So it gets into, like, the way I describe it is like, it gets into a massive mess, and then it gets into scope, and then it's really fantastic to use, really slick, everyone happy to use it, and then it gets again into the mess, and then it's just a cycle of that. And I don't think it will ever get into a stage which is stable, because it's evolving.
Okay, next question. Do you mostly rely on user testing to validate designs, or do you do a lot of A/B testing in the wild to measure which design does best?
Sure, it's to do testing is around if it's got, the way we put it into priority, if it's got high risk or it's got high value, then we test it. If it doesn't, then perhaps it's not worth doing. So we do use both, but with the current restriction of coronavirus and stuff, we can't do user groups and stuff like that. And so we heavily rely on A/B test right now to make sure what we design is valid, or it's actually working, it's actually helping people.
Okay. Corinne Janse van Rensburg has posted, and she said, "It seems that you know your customers really well. Where do you gather this data to help inform your designs?"
Very kind of her to say that. It's a hit and miss. Like, we don't always know the customer very, very well. I don't genuinely believe on the absolute, but we do listen. So customers who speak, we have support team who complains about certain things. We have the chat channels. We've got the Revolut community. We've got Twitters and social media. So everyone who posts something or mentions something, we make sure to tackle that. We make sure to actually get this problem and solve it. Depending on how big it is or what's the demand on this problem. Like, sometimes it could be one customer, but we'll reach that customer and say and speak to them. But yeah, it's just getting back to the customer and listening to them is the key.
Okay. We have a question with regard to tools. What tools do you use at Revolut as a part of your design process for research, design, and testing?
Sure. So we use, in terms of designing, we used to use Sketch, but then we moved into Figma. We realized Figma is actually quite powerful in terms of collaboration, real-time collaboration, so you can see and work with others. Since we used it, it's really fantastic, and really happy with it. So that's in terms of the tool of designing. Researching is the method you've got, like, like we've got user.com, so we use it, userresearch.com. So we go and put our designs and prototype of hypotheses there, and we learn from it. That's one of the stuff. The other one is the A/B test. But in terms of platforms and other stuff, so we've got different, and we try different ones, and there's a plan to build our own platform as well. So I can't pin a name because we've got multiple ones to try, but yeah.
Okay, fantastic. What are some of your favorite resources or blog posts and authors to follow in the design industry? How do you stay up to date or expand your knowledge?
Oh, that's a very good question. There are quite wonderful people out there, which I follow and then check their books and read. A good one, which I recently read, his Design for Emotion books, is Aaron Walter. The key is to search for books, and then if you hold one book and then read about it, surely that person or this author who wrote this book will reference certain other designers or other books that he got from, and therefore your knowledge will expand further. So you can just actually go and track others. My personal touch and view is slightly different. I follow people, majority who are not designers. I get my inspiration from them. So musicians, mathematicians, and others. So there's this woman. She's very experienced. I think her age is around 95, 98 something. She's a conductor, author, writer, mother, a teacher. So she said, there's nothing strong than actually, your imagination from thinking. So if you define certain things, that's what you said, you would exclude them. So therefore, when you go on Apple and Android as an example, they, Apple sells it as a holistic. Android, they'll give you specification. It's as a human, we think as a holistic, as one picture, but the moment you define them, even though they one entity, they become two. So it's one of those things I try to look for. Sometimes you will find your inspiration not from actual designers, but from different professions. The principles will be the same, I believe.
Brilliant. Okay.
Her name is Alice.
Next up, we have sorry?
Her name's Alice Parker, if you want to check.
Alice Parker. Okay, definitely. Next up, we have a question from one of the Sand Design interns, Mika Guliwe. She says, Muhammad, you spoke a lot about how creativity plays a vital role in design. What happens if you encounter a creative block? What do you do to keep your creative juices flowing in the midst of uncertainty?
That's a very good question. I don't know how will she define creative block, but I will assume here, unless if she can hear me and then can tell me precisely. So from my experience, when I had been blocked, like, I creatively think about something and then I get blocked, I park it. I don't solve it right there. I park it and then I move to the next. So what happened here is, as you move into the next problem, creatively trying to solve it, things do emerge, solutions, thinking, as you keep thinking, and then you might find better solution to the one that you were stuck on. That's if the block, by definition in your question, is stuck in the problem and trying to solve it. But if the creative thinking is being blocked by, for example, I've designed this fantastic solution and I believe it's great, and tested it, the result came really great, but I presented it to the stakeholders, like, risk and compliance. They went like, no, we can't do this. You have to put labels here, you have to put labels here, you have to put this, and completely ruined everything. So this is another block. So how do you deal with these certain things? So my advice in here is, do not go ahead and design and jump into the solution before checking with these people. So everyone who's going to influence your design, get their requirement, get their needs, then gather everything together and then think of creative solution. Because showing it at the end is it's not great, because it will always put you back into the drawing board on the time when you don't want to. And last point to mention on creativity, there's a guy who works in Disney, Glenn Keane. I think he's one of my heroes, if I may say. So he's the guy who designed or drew characters, Aladdin, Pocahontas, and all these Disney characters. I grew up watching when I was a kid. So he says, the key to being creative is to be a child. So as a child, your creativity is really massive. And as you grow bigger and, as you grow older, your responsibility or your rational brain kicks in. So what happened here is you get less creative because your brain, your logical brains, suppress your creativity. So the key here is, to his point, and other psychologists have also said to this point, is as you are creative, as a child, as you grow, and then you go through this narrow path. This narrow path is a discipline, as they call it. So as you become, or you come out of that discipline path, they say, do not forget the creative you, which is the child you left behind. So you become the discipline and the creative. So often people do forget, and they become just super hyperlogical people, which is nothing wrong with that. But if you are a designer, I do believe creativity is quite strong. You need to have both, and to be more strong on creative side.
Okay, brilliant. Muhammad, it's been wonderful to do this Q&A with you, and I really enjoyed your talk.
My pleasure.
Definitely something I'm going to refer back to after it's uploaded on our YouTube channel and our podcast. And with that, I'm going to move into the next part of UX Joburg, which is our networking session. But before I do that, I'd like to just give a teaser for what's coming up. So just a heads up, there is going to be no UX Joburg meeting scheduled for October. However, coming in November, we are going to be having Debbie Levitt, the Mary Poppins of CX UX. Debbie Levitt is absolutely fantastic. I've been reading her book, Delta CX, over the last 2 months, and it is the best UX book that I've read, hands down. It's been absolutely blowing my mind. So I'd highly recommend going and picking up a copy of Delta CX in preparation for her interview on the upcoming November UX Joburg. But I'm really excited to have her on. And if you guys have any questions, get those ready. And fantastic. Before we hand off, I'd like to thank UX Joburg sponsor, Sand Design. You can find out about the services they offer on their website, sanddollardesign.co.